Okay, this is the Library Trustees meeting of May 13th, 2020 at 3 p.m. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, Chapter 30A 20 relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency. The May 13th, 2020 public meeting of the Lakeville Library Trustees shall be physically closed to the public to avoid any group congregation. However, you can view this meeting in progress at facebook.com/LakeCAM. You do not need a Facebook account to view this meeting. This meeting will be recorded and available to view at a later date at www.lakecam.tv. Okay, as a primary matter, this is Rich LaCamera, the chairman of the Lakeville Board of Trustees. Permit me to confirm that all members, staff, and anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please confirm the affirmative. Ruth Gross.
Present.
Nancy LaFave.
Present.
As far as the staff is concerned, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jamie,
Viveris. Present.
Thank you. Present. Thank you. Okay. Introduction to the remote meeting. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting of the Lakeville Trustees, and is being conducted remotely with the governor's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate this transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend the public gatherings. As such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in public accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is affordable, so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access to this does not ensure public participation unless the participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. This meeting, the Lakeville Trustees is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website for Zoom meetings. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating in the video. Accordingly, please be aware that all folks may be able to see and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by this recording. Meeting materials. All supporting materials have been provided to the members of this body and are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now meeting ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before you do so, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of business to ensure accurate meetings. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chairman will go down a line of members, inviting each member by name to provide comments, questions, or motions. Please hold your name until you're called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps accurate minutes. For any response, wait till the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. For items with public comment, there will be no public comment at this meeting, so you do not have to read this information below. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting shall be conducted by roll call vote only. Okay, so we're all set finally. You have to read all that stuff. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the secretary's report. And I know that the secretary has provided us a copy of the minutes. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
I need a second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? LaCAM, aye. Ruth?
Aye.
Nancy?
Nancy, aye.
Okay.
Faith.
Okay. The budget report, Jamie, I don't know if you want to, I know you provided us an update. Is there anything that you want to discuss having to do with the budget that you provided us?
No, I mean, as we usually do, it's just a chance to review. I don't have any real concerns. I mean, I think the one area that will be interesting this year is electricity, since we have been closed for this time, that I anticipate having some available funds there, as well as the heating, but everything else is pretty much in line. I have some materials for the books line, like we're going to need to be getting closer to expending that by the end of the year, but there are some outstanding orders already that will just need to be unpacked, and we can take care of those invoices. And I still have to submit orders for May and June, but as far as where we are, I don't have any concerns about the budget so far.
Okay, any of the trustees have any questions having to do with the budget?
We still have the parking lot lights on, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I felt like for safety purposes, because there are still people coming to the building to return materials and use the Wi-Fi in the parking lot, that it didn't make sense to not have those available.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the interior, it's a combination of the lights being off, no computer use, as well as the HVAC has been set to unoccupied for the sake of saving energy there. So it's a lot less than what we typically spend in a month, but I did leave outside on.
Yes, good.
Okay, next item is the director's report. Jamie?
All right, so I just had a one-page report for you to give you a sense of what the staff has been working on during this time. After being closed on March 16th, we had to adapt to serving the community without the building. So we embraced virtual services. You're using social media, email blasts, and websites to connect with the community. It's similar to what's happened in the schools, where the educators have had to adapt to remote learning. We've had to think a bit outside the box and come up with ways to serve the patrons that are, what I like to say, as novel as the virus that's put us in this situation. The library staff has been working behind the scenes to continue collection development. We've been delivering services virtually and engaging in other work that will help us to do our jobs better when we're able to offer in-person services again. We've implemented a number of new online tools such as Zoom, just what we're using today, but we're using it as a staff to connect with each other and as well as with patrons. So it's a virtual conferencing software. We've begun using Google Docs, so there's document sharing happening. Another tool called You Can Book Me, which manages online appointments, and Libraryware, which is how I've been doing the e-blast to the community. So we've also been answering questions that have been submitted via online forms, emails, and over the phone. The book drop has remained open for this time for returns as well. So we started with a focus on reworking how we were going to deliver programs, because I felt like gatherings were the first thing to go and will likely be the last thing to come back during whatever is a new normal. So for example, the families with small children can still engage with Ms. Teresa for Story Hour on Facebook Live. She's also offering virtual book shares and as well as one-on-one appointment time via Zoom for the community. For the adults, we transitioned to using Zoom to offer virtual programs such as Novelties Book Club and Writers Group. And we have drop-in times available that we're calling Librarian is in. And we're already talking, we're going to expand these offerings over time. We also expanded access to online collections for both children and adults. So what has happened during this time is that vendors have started opening up free access to products in response to COVID-19 for libraries. So there's a special section on the webpage now, which is a library at home page that kind of pulls together all of the different resources by type and other activities available to folks 24/7. Things that are similar to what we would normally do, like part of what our mission is offering educational, informational, cultural programming as well as materials, and we're just we moved all of that mission to online at this point. And work now has begun on we'll call planning to reopen, which will be done in phases, and hopefully being able to provide some access to the physical collection at some point. I would have maybe liked to have tried this sooner, but there's a number of concerns standing in the way, including issues of health and safety, timing, and logistics. So for example, in February, we circulated 7,400 physical items in the library. So like generally these transactions are managed by a staff of 6, like there are people in and out. So trying to think about that during this time for everyone's health and safety, including patrons and staff, as well as the system that we use to generally manage that process is not available to us during this time. Folks can search our catalog for items that we have and place things on hold, but the back end of things that we use as a staff have essentially been shut down because all the libraries are shut down. And statewide delivery was suspended back in March as well. So we're working with the staff at the Sales Library Network to help develop a way to best implement some kind of contactless curbside pickup, because using the system and other tools while still, we have to maintain appropriate social distancing. And I want to make sure that we're safeguarding town property as well. It became clear as time went on that the collective wisdom in the field has been that this service would become part of a reopening plan, like once stay-at-home orders are, I guess, relaxed. So that's kind of where we've been at. Buildings and grounds, like I already mentioned, we shut the building down for a long-term, or just a time where, since we're not going to be here, I mean, I'm still here in the building, but it's not being open to the public. We did leave the Wi-Fi on in the parking lot for the community, and effort to coordinate the library ground maintenance with other town departments has continued. For anybody who's driven by, it looks great out there. The highway was helping to work on the whole flagpole area that now has grass that's come in. The grounds have been mulched and plantings are cleaned up and the barrels have been redone. So spring has sprung here at the library. As far as the Friends, I have on my report, for obvious reasons, the Friends didn't meet in April or May, but they hope to meet virtually in June. And the Great Ponds Gallery as well has had to work to reschedule some of the exhibits that were planned in April and May. So that's where we're at.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, we need to thank the highway department and the maintenance Teddy and his crew. They've done a lot of work there, during this period, and Jamie's right. Everything looks terrific, and they've done a nice job, and we appreciate that. One question, Jamie, have you had a chance to get a hold of Kevin about the power for the?
Yeah, I put in a work request for that, and Ted was going to call to
Okay.
get in touch with him.
what we're talking about is that the pumps will put back in for the waterfalls, and one of them keeps tripping. So she has Kevin coming out and looking at that plug. So hopefully we'll get them turned on shortly. Okay, anybody else got any questions or comments about the director's reports or anything to do with the buildings? Or
Has the public been receptive to what you have implemented?
You know, I think there hasn't been anything necessarily negative. I mean, I suppose we would like to see a little bit more engagement with it. The children's side of things, I think, is fine. The regular programming that we offer has been well received. You know, they were really excited to be able to meet again and have programming, even though it was a little different for all of us to be able to have it running. And we even had a program last night. Steve Manchester, who's a local author, he's been here before in person, but he ran a local author discussion last night. So, you know, we're still able to reach out to people in the community and bring them together. You know, the form has been popular, and just basic emails. Like I said, as far as the other virtual things, I think part of it is perhaps working a little bit harder to get the word out that we are still available to them. Because I think people see, you know, if the building's been closed, then we don't have services, but we are still here and available for people. But I think once we're at a place where we have the physical collection potentially moving, we would see more activity, certainly, on all fronts, I think.
okay, any other questions on that piece? All right. The next item on the agenda is Jamie's plan for reopening, which is once again a draft, because we don't know, you know, what the governor's going to do next Monday, and when we know for sure that whatever's done, it's going to be done in phases. And Jamie, you really did a terrific job, you know, laying out all the different phases, you know, for opening, you know, getting some of the services back in the library, and eventually, you know, opening. And it's very complex, okay, because, you know, to open a building, you know, to allow the public in, as you know, there's a lot of things, you know, that need to be addressed. So I assume the trustees have had a chance to review this plan. There.
No, I just got it not too long ago, but yes.
Okay. Anyways, Jamie, maybe you just want to talk about the three potential phases that we could take to try to, you know, get the library reopened. But once again, there's a lot of ifs here, you know, right now. So,
You know, as far as, you know, for as much as you try to put together something, you end up with almost as many questions sometimes. And as you mentioned, like, without knowing really what the governor's plan is, it's hard to know. This is really, it's very draft. There's definitely no dates. It's just the idea of moving in a forward progression once it seems like things are starting to move in that way. Just to make you aware too, that the library community has sent, has, I guess, made a request of the Polito task force that's happening at the state level in terms of whether or not there would be some guidance included in the task force guidance that comes out for the municipalities, like specifically for libraries. So like we are all still trying to work together to come up with what our issues are as libraries, because we all have common concerns. Each individual town has its own set of issues. And so this really just takes into account kind of very big picture of what it could potentially look like. As you said, I kind of have a 3-phase plan. It's potential that maybe it needs to move more like into a 6, like smaller chunks at a time, depending on what's happening in the world, depending on what's happening as far as guidance from the state. But it all takes into account, trying to be the safety of the community and the safety of the library staff, while trying to provide those services that we're uniquely positioned to perform. So, in all of the scenarios, it assumes that there's a process for cleaning and procedures for disinfecting all those contact points, providing staff with protective gear when it's appropriate, and, and communicating with the staff and the public on a regular basis. And I like to, when I've thought about this plan, I see it more as a dial almost, where you could potentially starting here and you're turning up, and then depending on what's happening in the world and as things change, if we need to essentially revert back, you move backwards back into another phase, similar to the same language I think that's happening as far as the state's concerned. But the phase 1 really would be that, once, I guess I should also say that there are also some factors about, whether or not we can move forward with things, is like, do we have all the supplies and materials necessary to maintain the high hygiene standards that we're going to need during this time? That I think has been a challenge for everyone, is trying to secure those things, and, making sure that we have sufficient staffing to run operations safely too. So taking into account what's happening as far as the staff itself. And this is one thing, I guess, when I'm part of probably the department head process, is to see if there will be any additional support from town for the cleaning and disinfecting. Because one of the biggest concerns I guess I have about this facility is, it's 15,000 square feet, and it's a completely shared space with shared equipment, not only from the staff point of view, but from the patron point of view. I mean, that's the whole basis, is that what we have is shared. So trying to make sure that we implement services in a way that safety is still there for everyone involved. The first phase really would just be, I guess you see from my plan, I kind of break it down by facility and service adjustments, think about work adjustments for staff, and then communications with the public. It's that the building, I think will still need to remain closed for some time. Maybe once the staff are coming back, we would still maintain all of those online services like library card registrations that are happening online. We wouldn't have meetings, no in-house programming, but things like the statewide delivery would potentially start again. I don't know, there's not a date for that either. It's, their initial plans are they have to come and deal with all of the things that libraries already have in-house that kind of backed up from when we were initially closed. So they have to deal with that and process those things, and then figure out how everybody is getting back online. One of the biggest concerns, I guess, that came out of this, or biggest areas, is really the materials handling. So the items that we have in our collection, they go out to the community, to people's homes, and they're traveling with them, and then they come back into the book drop, and they're coming from all different places. So we had, the CDC has put out guidelines for materials handling as far as libraries are concerned. So there is a process for dealing with those things. When I empty the book drop, I'm sure to take precautions and have protective gear on, because I'm handling all those things that are out in the community. And then those materials need to be quarantined for some time before they could go back out. So for now, I'm clearing and leaving the items aside for a period of time so that way we make sure that they're safe. But when we start to think about circulating the materials again out in the community, we have to make sure we have a process to manage that, so that the things that are coming in from people have time to make sure that they're safe to go out again. As far as the work adjustments, we have to think about the staff in the building. So whether or not there's some combination of staff in the building, some still working remotely when it's possible. But, being able for the staff who are here answering phone calls and completing other tasks. I mean, the building itself is large enough, and what we would have to do is rethink about our workstations, because that's the biggest issue, is that right now we share equipment. Some of us have individual office space that can be used, but there's also an area where most of the transactions would happen, even if we're not open to the public, just for clearing out book drop and things like that. We would have shared equipment, but I've already started to, as I take trips around the building, it's like, okay, maybe that area can be repurposed for this purpose, and it has a particular job to do, and a particular staff member would be stationed in that area and not sharing equipment with another person. So it's trying to think about, working with the space that we have, dividing it in a way where all of the activities are getting done, but people aren't having to necessarily be on top of each other, and make sure that there's the 6-foot distance happening, and making sure that we have a process for sanitizing things for staff, for themselves. Even like, for example, even as I've been here, if I have to travel through it all, I've been wearing a mask just to make sure that I'm keeping, the space clean, but then I sanitize like the door handles and things like that on my way out. So I think we just will have to develop a whole new way of being in this building. I mean, we already have a certain level of doing that, because being a public space and having all manner of people coming in all different forms, like we're handling materials that have been out there. We are used to the high hand washing. I think at this point we would step it up a bit more than what we usually do, but I think by virtue of being in the public, we've kind of had some of that experience, and that's my only concern with, as we move forward on through the phases, is the community self-regulating in terms of wearing the masks in the building and things of that nature. But I think the phase process means that we're opening up, but a little bit more at a time. And then eventually, I think the other piece of it is the communications that will continue to happen. And as things change, making sure that information gets out there. And as we move through, say, to phase 2, like once the, meetings of no more than 50 people is coming up, that we start opening to the public on a limited basis. I do have some questions about whether or not we keep stacks closed, but I think some things will have to stay closed for some time, like the small quiet rooms. That's a space where people would normally go in with other people in close proximity, and or it's a space where somebody would use it and then after someone else would use it. So there'll be certain things based on our ability to, we wouldn't be able to keep it clean enough that we may not be able to offer it right away until we've moved past a different point. But the whole idea of it is that, eventually certain programming comes back, where it's like less than, when we're at the place where, if anything that's maybe less than 20 people eventually comes back. I think we're going to continue with the online programming for as long as we can, because I think that's the thing where most of what we have programming that has a good number of people, like 30, 40, 50, 60 higher. And One of the issues right now too is for libraries is like what is summer reading going to look like? And so I know Teresa's been kind of working on that as far as, virtual programming there and working with other colleagues just to see kind of what the general thought is about summer reading for this year. But, eventually we would move to the place where more and more staff in the building at the same time. Like we start with staggered schedules and expand from there. And then eventually at some point when, essentially it's when the gatherings of more than 50 people are allowed and that we could be open to the public with less restriction. So, we still would probably have a new arrangement of furnishings just to make sure that social distancing can still happen, because it's probably going to be prudent. That's, I think, going to be the biggest piece with all of this, is figuring out what we have for furnishings, how we make certain things available and other things not available. If we, I'm thinking we kind of start potentially with providing service outside, and then maybe it moves inside on a limited basis, whether or not we take advantage of that lobby area where, rather than having people but traveling throughout the entire building, we congregate some services in that front area. I was looking already about what we have access to in terms of data points and electricity, whether or not we have computer access happening there by appointment. So that way people have access, but it's not, it's more of in a controlled environment. So that way we can keep it safe for people. And then, starting with that and then expanding a little more, determining, when it's safe to open the stacks, or if we will have staff retrieving materials for people, similar to the times of old, I guess, when library stacks weren't open. But it'd be not only about the service, but about the safety aspect for both patrons and staff, because I think in order to make materials available to people, the staff is going to have to travel throughout the whole building. And so we're also talking about, in terms of libraries, like, do we have to have separate hours where the staff are doing some of the prep work or putting things away, and that's separate from the public hours, so that way you're not having a situation where people are all having to travel into the same area. This is more so like once you're open for browsing. But there are so many little moving parts. So this plan really is very draft. It's just putting out some thoughts about how to tackle this. We're hoping for more guidance from the state level. I know that the FBLC, like I said, has had planning meetings with all of the libraries, and we've given our feedback in terms of our concerns. And so there'll be some additional guidance for us and things to consider that maybe, like I've tried to include all the areas that I can think of at this point that we need to consider, and thinking about how we roll things out for people. But, I think will be fluid.
Okay, anybody have any questions now? It's obvious we can't implement this anyways, right now, but at least Jamie has documented the 3 phases that we need to address if we're going to move forward, depending upon the whole timing of this thing. So I don't think, I think people should realize that I don't think on May 18th, this magic wand is going to be waved and all of a sudden everything's going to open up. That's not the case, at all. But so maybe when we get some more guidelines from the state and from the governor, that we can have a further meeting maybe in the next week or so, depending upon what comes out of it, and then decide what we want to do, how we want to implement it. And, we got the other thing, of course, Jamie knows too, because she's participated in the department head meeting, that, we have to get this approval by the board of the health agent, first of all, and then, of course, it depends upon the situation, the board of health too. So anybody got any questions about that?
First of all, Jamie, it's very thorough. Thank you for all your work on this. I am, when you do open with the small staff, are you anticipating 3 people at least in the library, or do we need to address that?
Well, I know, ironically, when we're open, we like to have a minimum of 3
Right.
in order to be for safety. I think in this case, it's probably a maximum of 3, where we're staggering to make sure, to make sure we have enough staffing to manage whatever services we're offering, but not more than what we need, so to maintain social distancing. So it's finding that spot where, in terms of whatever work needs to be done here versus what could be continued elsewhere. So for example, the programming that's happening in the evenings, that doesn't necessarily have to happen here because people are not coming here anyway. So those sort of certain duties would probably still be done in a remote fashion, but there may be other things, well, especially if it's related to the collection, you have to be here in-house. But whether or not that's it's looking at what people's jobs or responsibilities are, looking at what sort of level of service we're offering, and how many staff are needed to actually successfully provide it. And that's the thing with now is and having to look at a whole new model for providing the service. It's like determining what that means. I think we're going to have to learn a little bit as we go, and adjust it as we go.
I think that, I'm not sure if can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the 3 people in the building was always when we were open to the public. So I think that if we're not open to the public in terms of people coming into the building, then you could make an adjustment on how many people, if you only need 1 staff person to help or something like that. Yeah.
No, I meant when we are open to the public, but not quite up to the number of people in the library that we're used to. Do you expect having just 2 in the building at any point?
I mean, maybe at the phase where if we have co-located services, just say in the front part of the building, it's potentially fine to have 2, but I don't know. I think we may stay with 3 in terms of safety. Like, it depends. Some of it depends on, I guess, who it is and whether or not the staff person has a dedicated space to be in or not. Because I couldn't have, for example, 3 of the circulation assistants, because they would all be using the same equipment and location. So
Right.
some of it will be staggering, who is here in terms of being on staff and rotating through, so that way there's only ever 1 person who needs to be in one particular space. But yeah, it's hard to know, because I think some of it is if once we do have people in and we're having to interact with them, or move throughout the building to retrieve materials for them, for safety's sake, it's a big space. So if you only have the 2, then if something, sometimes there's safety in having that 3rd person be there for things.
I guess the reason I brought it up is that was something that the trustees had agreed, that we wanted 3 people for safety at all times. So if you do need to adjust that for this transition period, however long it lasts, then we need
Right.
to.
I think maybe if we start to think we're actually open to the public and people are coming in, even if it's at a limited capacity, if they have access to the full range of the building, I think we would still need to be at 3.
Okay.
Because that idea of safety is still there. It
All
might be early on where if we're trying to do the services by providing it, outside or just in the lobby, But I think if we have people coming in, the 3 is not a bad idea, and it would just be a matter of staggering who's here. But this is where it's like, we haven't quite gotten to that point yet. You know, what I did for the staff during the time that we've been closed is they do still have a schedule, and it's broken down into, you know, project time, programming time. And then what I envisioned is that work at home schedule could transition into a hybrid work at the library, work at home schedule until we get to some point where we're back at capacity. So it had some flexibility built in where people are moving throughout depending on what we're offering, who's coming in and for how long. I think there's some flexibility with that schedule, because part of the remote working was really also about, you know, helping people structure their days and making sure that people had particular tasks to do. And so there was a schedule built for that purpose, but I also see that it would be implemented now as we change and move through the phases. It's not our regular schedule. It's a special schedule we've been running during this time.
Okay. Anything else? Any other new business?
I have a reimbursement request for the plants that were put into the barrels. It's $157.
Okay. I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve that $150. How much? 152?
157.
157?
I move to approve it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I move that we approve Nancy's
Okay.
150.
You want to second that, Nancy?
Second.
All those in favor? LaCAM, aye.
Gross, aye.
LaFever, aye.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, Jamie can approve that invoice and process it, I believe.
Well, do we take that out of it? You may need, I may need your signatures.
All of them? Okay. All right, well, just let us know individually, and then we'll combine the building and sign it, I guess.
Yeah, I've been meeting, like if the staff need to come for any kind of paperwork things, timesheets, etc. I have a station set up outside. We actually have WB Mason delivers things outside, so we can set up something outside too.
Okay. Is that okay, Nancy?
That's fine.
Okay. We're all set. We voted on it. Yes. Anything else? So the next question would be, do we really want to set a meeting yet? Because we don't know what our next steps are going to be, and we can if you want. If anybody has any suggestion. I mean, I don't think we're going to wait a month. You know, we're probably going to have to meet, you know, somewhere in between that, depending upon what happens next week and the following week.
Jamie, do you need anything from us before you implement phase 1 or phase A? What would it?
Well, I think, you know, at this point, it's probably driven more by what the town is doing. The point of this was just to have something for you all, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the bigger picture is what is the town, where is the town moving with things, and then we would figure out where we fit in with that. So I don't know that it's even about like seeking approval for this now. It was just a chance to review.
Okay, so we want to leave the meeting open right now, and then Jamie can get back to us and give us an update as to where we are, and then we can hold a meeting. Is that okay?
Yes.
That sounds prudent, yeah.
Okay. Okay, since there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Uh,
Somebody did something, somebody did the other.
It's tough to do this. All those in favor, LaCAM, aye.
Gross, aye.
Lefebvre, aye. Am I muted?
Okay, all right, so